Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you. Of course, as you can see, the fact that I'm in a car, I'm learning. Don't worry, I'm stationary, but learning on the derech, on the way. It must be Friday. So, firstly, we were honored and delighted to have this morning the Chief Rabbi Mervis, who visited our community for davening, spoke after the service briefly, and we look forward to having him for a Shabbat in the not too distant future. So, of course, we dedicate today's learning in memory of all those that those that have yortzeit for someone, and also for those that are in their year. We wish all the families long life on their respective yortzeits. So, I would like to share a brief thought, an idea which I think is really, really fundamental. In this week's Torah portion, we find description of the formation of the Jewish people. And, if we were thinking about the formation of the Jewish people, bearing in mind when you go to Heathrow and you go to Ben Gurion and you're standing in line of the El Al queue, it doesn't quite look like any other queue. There's people in a very disjointed fashion that are lined up, and then one person starts a new queue, and they've got suitcases everywhere. And everywhere else, if you look at British Airways and you look at EasyJet, and everyone's standing like soldiers. Everyone's in a straight line with their bags next to them. It looks tidy. It looks clean. It looks neat. And you go to the Ben Gurion, or you go to Heathrow, and you see the El Al line, and it's shambolic. It's a mess. There's suitcases everywhere. This one's in one line. This one's in another line. It looks a real mess. And what's interesting is that this week's Torah portion speaks about the way the Jewish people traveled, not on El Al, but nonetheless they were traveling through the desert, and they had a formation. Now we would expect, right, if God's making the formation of the Jewish people, or dictating the formation of the Jewish people, right, that it's not going to look, haphazard, but it's going to be very orderly. It's going to be everyone walking in a straight line, one behind the other, right? It should look, symmetrical. And yet we find that the Jewish people walked. There were tribes in front, there were tribes on either side, and there were tribes behind, and the tabernacle was in the middle. Why did they walk in such a fashion? Why is it that they had flags for each of the tribes? So what does a flag represent? Flags have taken on tremendous significance in the last week or so. We've seen the Palestinians raising their flags. We've seen Israeli flags being burnt. What does a flag represent? You ever wondered what a flag represents? A flag is very much emblematic of the identity of that which the flag is flying for. So, for example, in the case of Israel, when we see that kachol v'lavan, that blue and white flag, it's emblematic of the values that we stand for, right, that are enshrined in the Constitution of Israel. We think about the shared identity, right, the vision, the shared past, and the vision for the future. And when it comes to the flags that the Jewish people had, they were no different. There were flags that each tribe had, and each of the colors of the tribe, of the flags, and the representation of the flags came and originated from the colors and the tribal representations on the choshen, on the breastplate that the high priest wore. Why is that? Because the idea was, and the idea is, that every tribe had its own unique mission and task. Every tribe was unique in that it had different strengths, different qualities. There were some that were excellent in business, others excelled in study and learning, others were craftsmen, others were fishermen. Every tribe had its own unique contribution to make to the Jewish people. And therefore the flags represented those skills, qualities, and attributes that each tribe was able to bring to bear as part of the Jewish people. Now, therefore, one of the beauties that we see in the flags and we see in the Jewish people was that rather than the Jewish people having unity equated with uniformity, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. The beauty in the unity of Jewish people and unity in general is when you have tremendous diversity, but you're able to pull the various threads together to create a most majestic tapestry. It is the breadth and depth of the various colors and formations that are able to produce a masterpiece. And therefore, the Jewish people all had their own role, their own unique way of serving the Almighty. And it didn't matter. It didn't really matter. The important thing was what was at the center of their lives. What did they place at the center when they walked in formation? We mentioned it earlier. That was the tabernacle. That was the Ark of the Covenant. As long as you're focused on the same thing, right? The epicenter of your lives is the same, then you can approach it from many, many different ways. It's not expected, it's not asked for us to be the same. Again, unity doesn't equate with uniformity. Rather, it's the diversity, which, with all the various colors, that is able to come together and to create something quite majestic. And therefore, when the Jewish people walked, and when the Jewish people now stand in line, we're not expected and we're not asked to stand, everyone in a straight line, looking the same, being the same. That's not the Jewish people. We are able to celebrate the great diversity in strengths, qualities, attributes, personalities that each and every one of us have. We're not trying to constrict. We're not expected to constrict, and quite the opposite. We're meant to bring out the latent potential and qualities, the creative juices that each of us have, and we are able to make our own unique contribution. So therefore, next time you stand in line in Ben Gurion and Heathrow and you're becoming exasperated by the fact that everyone seems to be standing in a slightly different way, in a slightly different line, it doesn't really matter. The important thing is that we have that common denominator, that shared destiny, that shared vision. And if we are able to share essentially the same vision, we've got the same goals, and we are able to celebrate what we have in common and to respect the differences, then we are certainly going to be going places, both as individuals and as part of the Jewish people. As we end, I want to conclude by wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom and praying for peace. Oseh Shalom b'ramav, v'ya'aseh Shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Our heartfelt prayers are to the Jewish people and to Israel, that we stand firmly by their side at this challenging time. And we wish and pray with all our hearts that there should be peace in Israel and that the people of Israel should be safe. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom. See you for the last of the Kabbalat Shabbat with David Berman, 4 p.m. on Zoom. Take care. Shabbat Shalom. Keep well.